All right, here we go. Scott Stuch from Sitdown, a great YouTube channel, and we're doing a collaboration. And we've recently become friends through a mutual friend, and he is going to speak about his past and his YouTube channel. What's up, Scotty?
Hey, what's up, John? Thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah, no problem, man. How's everything going?
Pretty good. It's like snow and ice over here in PA. I know you're not too far from me.
Yeah, I know. In Jersey, it just started snowing like maybe an hour ago. My wife had the dog out. We got a 6-month-old bulldog, and she couldn't wait for it to snow so he could throw himself in the yard and roll around the snow. So she's happy. I don't give a shit. She threw me out of the kitchen because I had some gas and I let it go.
Too much protein.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So Scott, how long ago did you start Sober Sit Down?
I started kicking it around. I threw out a pilot intro in like April of last year, and I didn't release my first episode that I recorded until July of this past year, so 2022.
Okay. So Sober Sit Down is a YouTube channel, and can it also be listened to on a podcast?
Yeah, we're linked up with Spotify, Apple Music, and another one. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The Google one, I think it is.
Google Podcast. I do the same exact thing. Yeah, I do the same exact thing. All right, cool. So why don't you just give us a rundown of what Sober Sit Down, the YouTube channel, is, and then we'll start going into your past and what led you to open up the YouTube channel.
So, Sober Sit Down was started for like addiction-based stories, but they some things happened that we'll get into a little later that made me change the way I wanted to platform it. And because there's certain reasons behind it that we'll get into later, but it's more of a remarkable rebounds platform. So it could be anybody from addiction related stories, anybody who, maybe somebody that owned a business at one time, lost everything and then brought themselves back, somebody that went through like some mental health problems, somebody that got locked up and came out and made a better life for themselves afterwards. Trying to instill hope and faith in those through stories to tell people like it's never too late to make those positive changes in your life, to live that life you want to live.
Okay. I actually have a couple of friends, now they're friends. I had done interviews with them, but now I consider them friends because they're always on my podcast, who had rough times in the past. One guy was homeless, drug addict in prison, and now he is a professional, IFBB professional bodybuilder. Been sober for years and turned himself around. And I also have another friend who's a girl who really, really rough background, and she became clean and turned into another pro, they call it figure athlete, and she's married to a great guy and now have a kid and they have a family, and I might be able to, they have really interesting stories, so maybe I can get you hooked up with them, because talk about a complete 180 and turnaround. I mean, it was something else. Okay, so I'm under the impression that the reason why you started Sober Sit Down and the turnaround stories with the addiction is because you went through some rough times yourself.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. So would you like to get into that?
Yeah, I mean, when I was, trying to see like where I want to take it from to build it up, but I guess people that know me locally, when I was in my younger years, my family had a very successful business, restaurant business. And, a lot of people, based on assumptions, they thought because of the way my family, made a lot of money back in the day, they thought it was like, living the Cinderella lifestyle story and everything like that, which ends up leading into, my parents going through a divorce in my teenage years. Then, led up until present day, but growing up in that business, I was big into, like, growing up, I was big into hockey. I was a big hockey player. And when I stopped playing hockey when I was like 21 because I snapped my ankle in half, I ended up starting hanging out with this crew down the gym. I was like 2003, 2004, so the club scene was, at its all-time highs. You know, good DJs, the Jersey Shore before the Jersey Shore. You know,
Right.
and we live, you know, where we live in PA, Jersey, New York. Like it was really big around here. So
Yeah.
started hanging out, you know, down the gym. I was rehabbing my leg. Started hanging out with some guys. Went into the clubs. You know, seeing what the good taste of it was like to, you know, meet good-looking girls. Started, you know, taking some supplements to lift with. That was a big thing back then. Started trying and experiment with stuff because I really didn't start drinking until I was right around then, around 20.
Right.
I didn't drink in high school. I was dedicated to hockey and just, you know, hanging out with girls and fixing up cars. And then I started veering away from the hockey after I broke my leg, and I started getting into, like, you know, the club scene and all that, and then I started getting really in depth in the family business. I'm like, okay, well, this is what it's going to be. It was going to be, you know, bartending, managing, making easy money behind the bar, you know, a couple $100 every time you go behind. So it was like access to money every night. You were never broke.
Right.
So, and then you see like people that are hanging out in the bars, people that aren't doing the right things and they're hanging out in the bars, but yet, like, you know, they have wads of money, they're doing this, and you're like, oh, this is, why should I go to college? So you start falling into that trap, and one thing just led to another, and it turned into full-fledged alcoholism to the point where when I was in my 30s, you know, went from being a social drinker out at the bars, and not saying I didn't get out of hand when I drank back then, but it led up into a point where nobody wanted to be around me, and you know, I was in my mid 30s, and you know, I'm drinking vodka out of a water bottle, hiding it around my house.
Oh, that's bad. Yeah. Okay. Well, how did you turn around? How did you turn your life around?
Well, I woke up in the hospital. Not the first time. It was definitely the last time. It was when maybe they said, like, you know, maybe one drink away from possibly coma or death.
Oh.
And I was, you know, I was arrested multiple times because of my alcoholism. I went down a bad path through my 20s, you know, constantly getting arrested or ended up getting hospitalized because of the alcoholism, like dehydration, alcohol poisoning, alcohol withdrawals, and just, you know, it was enough was enough at one point. And there was something that happened to me that day that I say, like, you know, I don't want to get into a religious debate with anybody, but, you know, I feel as though it was kind of like a spiritual awakening because I felt way different that day leaving that hospital. Something was different in me than all those other times I would say, I'm done, I'm not doing this no more, and then like 5 days later I go right back and relapse, you know?
Okay. Was it just alcohol, or was there drugs involved too?
Drugs never got me. I mean, I've experimented with drugs, nothing like too heavy, like, you know, like the club stuff. But just, you know, there was times I did it, I was so messed up on alcohol, I didn't even realize I did it till the next day and somebody told me.
Yeah,
so
right.
that stuff never grabbed me.
Right.
The alcohol was always the thing that grabbed me. But now that I look back on it, it was because I was suffering from mental health issues, like high anxiety, and I would think that that would calm me down. But, you know, the old phrase goes, if you think that alcohol is going to calm down anxiety, it's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline.
Yeah. Have you addressed your anxiety issues since then?
Not really. I never really had the opportunity. I was always working. What I did, like, when I got sober was I just started going to meetings and I stayed busy. I just, like you were saying about your friends earlier, and this is how I can relate to how I know why they're at their point in their life and they were previous addicts, is because we're always going to be addicts. It's just what you're going to be addicted to. Mm-hmm. So they channeled their addictions from negatives to positives, and now they're into like bodybuilding and stuff like that, where I just tried doing anything I can to keep stepping up the ladder, because I had a big rebuilding phase. Once I finally got sober, I was at rock bottom. I didn't even have a car. I didn't have nothing. So I was like slowly rebuilding myself, and I started channeling my addiction to positive stuff. So, you know, I went back to school. I learned a trade. I changed my employment. I was working like 60, 70 hours a week and going to school, trying to be a father, because my kid was 3 when I got sober. So I'm happy, you know, I'm blessed that she didn't really get to see me in like the rarest forms that I was in.
That's
she
good.
don't really remember those days. So I'm blessed. I'm blessed on that. So yeah, I mean,
How's the relationship with the daughter now?
Excellent.
Oh,
And
good.
I
Good to hear it.
I finally got to a point about 6 months ago in September. I found finally I got a career landing job that is career landing. It's not just a job; it's career landing. I finally found the thing that I'm passionate about, and I got into through a close friend of mine. He introduced me to auto sales, and it's like my new positive addiction. I love the money's a plus, but the job I'm very passionate about. I like.
Well, you said you were always into cars when you were a kid.
Yeah, and then I got away from it. It was like that whole Fast and Furious stage.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and it's not even the car aspect of it, because I'll be honest with you, like I'm not that knowledgeable when it comes to like, hey, how much horsepower does that have? How much is that? Like I was all like back in the day when I was in the cars, it was all about like putting on like body kits, sound systems, and just cruising the Ave, you know?
Yeah, right.
That's what we used to do back in the day. It was to pick up girls, you know?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, the kids don't even know what that's like anymore.
But I like the build up and the suspense of selling a car. You know, like the start to the end. Like, you know, when people hit you with objectives, trying to sit them down and, you know, finding what's best for them. And, you know, I like help. It kind of helps me with helping people too, because you get a lot of people that come in with bad situations, like kind of like how myself, like I see people that were like me a couple of years ago that are starting to just rebuild themselves, and they have bad credit. They're working 2 full-time jobs, and because of their credit, they're having a hard time getting into a reliable, affordable vehicle. So it kind of goes back to trying to help people, put them in better situations. So it kind of marries itself as a passion of mine to help people. I like the adrenaline rush of, you know, when things get kind of like you're going back and forth, and then finally you can like close the deal.
Right.
It's like a
right.
suspenseful build-up.
Okay, yeah, and it's after you close the deal, it's a sense of accomplishment, I would assume too, right?
Yeah, I'm very goal-stricken. I'm big on like short-term, long-term goals. So that's crushing goals is definitely something I'm very passionate about.
Okay, great. So you work full time at a job that you do well at. You also have the YouTube channel Sober Sitdown /podcast. Do you still work on cars on the side or no?
No.
No. What about the gym? We had a conversation, and you were telling me you were starting to get back into the gym again.
Yeah, I just recently went back into boxing. I was boxing for a while. I used to do boxing on the off season for hockey, because when I used to play hockey, I was like more of like an enforcer style.
Yeah. And not a side note. What's his name? Jake Paul finally lost his first fight.
Yeah, I was kind of rooting for Fury. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I think everybody was. Anybody who's a real fight fan or is a real boxing fan was rooting for Fury, because it's like, how many basketball players and YouTubers are you going to fight? You know, it's like, you know. So he finally fought one, decent fighter, and he lost. So.
And you have to question it, because, like, you know, they're going for a rematch. Like, you can tell just the way it ended. Like, when something that gets that amped up over a 2-year period and it ends by points and it's not a knockout, that it's set up for it's set up for part 2.
We've seen it over and over and over again. Yeah, you're 100% right. I've seen it over and over and over again. I mean, you can go down the list. But anyway, let's get back to you. So now you have Sober Sit Down, and you've had some excellent guests on. So why don't you just speak about some of the great guests you had on and what it was like interviewing them?
I had, I started off, my first opportunity was Larry Mazza. I mean, anybody that knows the history of the mob and stuff like that, Larry's, a pretty highly respected guy. Even outside the life, I mean, he's got a great book out called The Life. Still to this day, me and Larry are very close. We did a little sideshow for a while, and then he got involved with, he's opening up a new part of his gym, and he got doing with a show with football and stuff. So during football season, he got a little bit busy, and we're trying to get something going again, like once a month, because you start making these overcommitments and stuff like that of doing something every week. The weeks go by so fast when you're preoccupied, like going to work every day. And even I had to take a break on the podcasting back in December, because I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm going, holy shit, I got to lose some weight. I'm starting to pack on the weight, because I was starting to get addicted to the podcasting and not focusing on, you know, having that balance of work, podcasting, and the gym, and that's why I started boxing again, because that's what I wanted to do.
It's hard having a real good balance in life. It's not easy. It's always come pretty easy for me, but I can understand how things fall to the wayside. I'm okay in the way of balancing because me and my wife don't have kids. So that's one thing I don't have to worry about. If I did have kids, something would have to fall by the wayside. But yeah, I totally understand. Larry Mazza is also a friend of mine. He's been on my show, I think, 4 or 5 times. I'm from the same neighborhood. I didn't know who he was at the time when I was in the neighborhood, but I knew after everything had happened, with the whole Greg Scarpa thing and the war that happened, then then you knew who he was. But yeah, he's a great guy, man. He's been on my show, and he just heard that I was from BenSound, and he's like, yeah, absolutely, I'll come on. And he was on last week, actually. I had him, Hootie Russo, and Frankie Steele, who's also from BenSound, and all 3 were, great guests, man, really good people. Why don't you continue on? Because I know you even had bigger guests than Larry.
Well, then my next guest was Hootie Russo, who, as you know, we're both very good friends with.
Yeah.
He's done a lot for me. Me and him just did a project back in November. I haven't released it yet. We did like a walk and talk through New York. We weren't up in your section, but we were, in Howard Beach, Ozone Park, Little Italy. We shot some footage and stuff like that. I still haven't put it together because I'm not sure which route I want to take with it. We might actually be doing a part 2 when the weather gets better, because we were on a time limit that day. So I really didn't hit all the places that I wanted to go to. But as you know, in New York, like they say, the New York minute, every minute goes by like seconds. So to hit everything in one day is clearly impossible unless you're staying over,
Right.
And I only live an hour and 40 minutes from the city. So, I mean, it wasn't nothing for me to come up for the day and, sit on and do, what do you guys call it, their stoop talk,
Yeah. You sit on the stoop, yeah. Those things don't really happen much anymore. The neighborhoods that, that Bensonhurst or Howard Beach, it's either very mixed. My neighborhood is very mixed, and let's face it, I mean, people don't sit on the stoop before, they have their phones, their iPads, Netflix, PlayStation, Paramount Plus, you go down the list, and you didn't even leave the house yet, So, people don't sit on the stoop and bullshit anymore like they used to back in the day.
Yeah, so then after Hootie was like 2 weeks after Larry. After Hootie, I linked up with Anthony Arlotta.
Okay.
I don't know if you know Anthony or not.
I've seen his interviews. I never had him on the show, but I've seen his interviews.
Anthony's a good dude. He's still, a guy that I talk to, on the phone every once in a while. Anthony's, gave me some good advice over the years. I mean, beyond contrary of, what anybody wants to say about him, he's a, he's been through a lot and he's seen it, he's done it, and he's gave me some solid advice. There's times I was getting down on myself, and he was telling me, enough of that self-pity nonsense, like get up, dust it off, and keep moving. And, a lot of those conversations I had with him, I greatly appreciate. I mean, he still very actively supports me on social media. Like, I'll post stuff about the car sales and stuff, because Anthony actually sold cars when he first got out. And and I was telling him I was going from a CDL truck driver to an auto salesman. He's like, I'm telling you, you're going to be good at that. He's like, I'm telling you. And we were talking about it, and, he gave me a lot of good advice with that, though, outside of that. So now we're, Larry Mazza, Hootie Russo, and Anthony Arlotta in, 4-week, 5-week period. I have 3 ex-members of the Life on. So now people locally that were all amped up about my show are starting to ask me. Well, not ask me. They were asking my brother, because my brother was like out in the scene. I don't really go out locally, except the gym and stuff. They're like, is your brother doing a sobriety podcast, or is he doing a mafia podcast? And he's like, my brother's like, I don't know. Like, he's just doing rebound stories. He's doing rebound stories. So then after them, I did a 3-part segment with some local friends of mine, and I was linked up with a guy who was sponsoring my show, Anthony Vallone. He owns Top Class Mafia clothing, nothing to do with the mob, but he just called Top Class Mafia. He's an apparel company. we would do a Zoom style like this, and then I had three guys from my local neighborhood that I used to go to the club scene with back in the day, and we were talking about the old times. And that's, I call it Club Era 1, 2, and 3. We have 3 volumes. One guy was a bouncer, the other guy was and the other 2 guys were just like guys I went to the club with back in the day, and they were local gym rats. But we talked about the old like Sound Factory days and going to Pasha and all those places.
God, I remember that. Yeah, sure. Pasha was a little bit toward the end of, like, I'm probably a little bit older than you. But,
I'm 37.
Yeah, I'm 46. So Pasha was really at the end of me going out to nightclubs. It started coming around. When it was me, it was Sound Factory. It was the Tunnel. It was the Palladium.
Crowbar.
No, I never went to Crowbar. Roxy, the Roxy. I forgot the other ones. Exit. Oh God, remember Exit? I don't know if you ever remember that.
No, you see, like I never really was a New York guy. Like I went to Sound Factory or Pasha. I can't remember. I was so messed up. I don't remember what it was. But so I mean, I really didn't. We had a lot of local clubs around here, so we had like our own little territory in here. We had like 5 or 6 clubs that we used to circulate around. Then there was the after hours clubs we used to go to.
Yeah.
But when we would venture out, at least me and the people that I would go out with, I can go an hour and 40 minutes east to New York City, or I can go an hour and 40 minutes south and hit Philly. And Philly was always an easier ride because there was less traffic coming into the city.
Yeah, that's
so we
right.
would do, and then if you stay another 45 minutes on top of going to Philly, you hit AC. So we used to do Philly and AC a lot.
Yeah, I used to go to Atlantic City a lot too. Yeah.
Remember, like Club True, like it would open up on Friday nights at 11 o'clock and it wouldn't close till like Monday morning.
Yeah, when I used to go to Atlantic City, the big place was oh God, it was in the Taj Mahal, which isn't there anymore. Help me out here. Oh God, it was in the Taj.
There was a place called the Chelsea that was up by
I can't remember
the
it.
Tropicana, and then we used to go to we used to skip down because nobody was working full time back then. Everybody was just making enough money to hustle and get your Armani V-neck and have enough money for a gym membership, and then we'd go out or whatever. But I remember we used to go on Monday nights. We'd go down to the Borgata, and they had that Murmur Mondays.
Oh yeah. See, this is a little bit. Yeah, this is a little bit. Oh God, wow! Remember him? Yeah, that was a little bit ahead of my time. It was Casbah was the name of the club in Taj Mahal. Yeah, you're a little bit younger than me, so the stuff you're mentioning is like at the tail end when I was like kind of done going to the clubs. But go ahead, continue with the other guests you've had on. You had some great guests.
Yeah, then after that I linked up with my first in studio guest was Johnny A-Light. Mm-hmm. I had Johnny A-Light in here. People that know the life. Johnny A-Light's a pretty heavy hitter. He's a guy. Let's see. I had a local musician on that we did with mental health. He was like when the band scene was the band scene back in the day. Everybody go to the corner bars. They would want to listen to like the 80s rock bands or whatever.
Yeah.
We had a local guy around here. They did like an 80s cover. It was called Bad Hair Day, and I had him. He was also a beer rep during the day, so when I used to manage the bar, he used to be the beer rep during the day, and then like on the weekends, he'd be putting the wig on, and he'd be up on the stage, and they were real popular, and like nobody knew, he was always smiling and stuff like that, and then me and him started talking at the gym a couple months ago, and we were talking about like mental health struggles, and he's like, well, you know that I struggle with mental health, and then we did a set on Sober Sitdown. That was a local one.
Okay.
I had Gene Barillo on after Johnny A-Light.
Okay.
Gene, beyond what people want to say about him, he's another good guy. I mean, people make mistakes, and it's sad that people judge people off of mistakes rather than judging people off of their negatives and not their positives. But it is what it is.
Yeah. Now all these people that you mentioned, Larry Mazza, Hootie Russo, Anthony Arlotta, Johnny A-Light, all of these guys have been on the biggest podcasts in the world. They've been on Vlad TV, they've been on Valuetainment or Patrick Bet-David, who I admire greatly. And then you've had them on your channel, which says a lot. You're not getting, C-rated guys in the social media world. You're getting top A-class guys. I mean, I was on Michael Dowd and John A. Light's channel some time ago. They're not doing it together anymore, but this was over the summer. And Michael Dowd was on Joe Rogan, you know, and these are guys, these are top notch interviews you've gotten on your show.
They're just, I mean, it's a blessing. It really is. I mean, you know, the biggest thing that, you know, when I was an addict back in the day, and that was the main thing I vowed to myself, I was never a thief. That was one thing about me. I never stole when I was an addict. And I'll swear on my mother's grave, who died in 2011. I never stole from anybody. I've always supported my own habit. I might have spent my money irresponsibly when I was an addict and not paid bills in order to fulfill my addiction, but I never stole off anybody. The point of that was
Michael Dowd story, because he was the thief and a half.
Oh, the point of that story was, sorry, I had a long day. Today was a true Monday at work.
That's
and
all
it's
right.
it's the end of the month, so it's like crunch time to get all the sales in before the end of the month.
Oh,
so my brain's like mashed potatoes right now.
I hear you, bro.
So when, you know, I was an addict, as most addicts are, I tend to exaggerate a little bit. I was a little bit of a liar to get what I wanted, when I wanted it, how I wanted it, and I was a big manipulator. So I vowed to myself that no matter what, when I actually get to expose the world who I really am, rather than Scott the addict or Scott the drunk, I wanted to make sure that people know when they hear me say something, they can count on me. And if I write a check, you can go and cash it. And when I said to myself that I was going to get these guys on my show, I made sure if I did it, I was going to do it and follow through with it. And I was going to do whatever it took to you know, to make this happen. So I feel as though in that realm and with that is, it's all based upon how you carry yourself. If you're a stand-up guy, if you're respectful to people, if you don't, you know, bring a negative cloud around with you, you're going to continue to get opportunities.
Absolutely, 100%.
And I think that you probably learned that. I mean, how long you've been podcasting? Way longer than I have. I mean, is that kind of how you started? I mean, you had big guests like Jay Cutler. I mean, the guy from Run DMC.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel as though that you can relate to what I'm saying with that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things that YouTubers and podcasters that are just getting started that they need to know, and both of us know this, is that your word has to be valid. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. You can't be flaky, because then rumors, word travels fast. Because you got to remember, all these guys like Larry, John, Gene, Hootie, they all know each other, right? They all know each other, and even in the bodybuilding world, they have a separate bodybuilding channel. It's a small world, and all those guys know each other. I wouldn't be able to put the podcasts together if I wasn't respectful, if I wasn't a man of my word, and if I wasn't good at what I did, and especially respectful. That's number one, because these guys are doing you a favor. Like, we're not Vlad TV, Joe Rogan, Valuetainment. We're not those guys where we have millions and millions of subscribers. So when you get a guy like a Larry Mazzo, or in my case, a Jay Cutler to come on, it is 100% necessary to be respectful as you possibly can, because they're really helping you. It's because they know they're a big name. And when they say, okay, yeah, John, I'll come on, no problem. You better be a man of your word, because word travels fast, and they know that they're helping you, and they want to know that they're helping a decent person. And that's the one thing that you cannot overlook. And the other thing is consistency. It's got to be consistent. And again, you know this. This is just for people out there that want to start a YouTube channel. I mean, I've spoken to so many people that say they want to start a YouTube channel, but they don't realize how much work goes into it. And if you don't really want to do it, you're just wasting your time and money and energy, because it's a constant fight to get good content on. Constant, and every channel has to be somewhat one-dimensional. So, I mean, having the mob guys on and having guys on about, drug addiction and alcohol, that's kind of all in the same realm, right? That's why I call this channel the Outcasts, because I've had mob guys on, I've had biker guys on, I've had porno stars on, but that's all kind of in the same world, if you will, But then things like really radically different, like bodybuilding, that has to be completely separate. Like if you're going to do anything like that, that's got to be separate from this. One-dimensional channels do much better on YouTube. The actual podcast, the podcast that you listen to in the car, different. You could have a variety show and be successful. Not so much in YouTube. The variety shows on YouTube that do well are the ones where the host is very famous, like a Rogan or a Patrick Bet-David or or DJ Vlad, and people come to see them. But guys like us, it's all those things count, and they count greatly because, like I said, word travels fast, and you don't want to have people say, that Stuch guy, not a good dude. You don't want that to happen. You want them to go, Stuch, great dude. And that's exactly how I met you. Hootie Russo messaged me and said, look, I got a great guy. I think you guys would get along and do a great collab with. And I was like, all right, cool, no problem. And that's how things work. And fortunately for us, we happen to be stand-up guys, and it works easy for us. But if you have people that are very flaky, or you don't want to commit, or you don't want to do the work, forget it. Find something else, man.
The main thing is like you can't come into this, and I think you can agree with me on this, being that you're a little bit more experienced than I am. You can't go into this making it that you're gonna be a millionaire overnight. Like people think that they can just do this for a living, and that's just it. And I mean, maybe some people can, but I'm not fortunate enough to. I mean, I have a family I got to support, so right. I have to do it as a hobby, which I'm cool with, because to be at the end of the day, if my segment reaches somebody that's out there listening and they're like, holy shit, like that story that was told with whatever guest I had on, or if it was just me saying something, if that reached somebody and it saved their life and they started over and pushed themselves into a better version of them, then that's what it's all about. I mean, I really don't rely on this. I enjoy sitting down with people like yourself. I enjoy just networking and getting the opportunities to sit down and talk with other people that have the same common interests as I do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people that aren't into it think, oh, you make one big video and that's it, you're a millionaire. No, it doesn't work that way. It is a grind, and it's a constant chipping at the grind. The only people that have overnight success, as far as I'm concerned, are two different types of people. People that came before the YouTube craze, that they came before the height of YouTube, and people that are famous within whatever genre they're in. Like you knew Sammy the Bull's YouTube channel was going to blow up because he's Sammy the Bull, right? He could just sit there and tell stories. But regular guys like us that just want to do it as a hobby or maybe have a second income, it takes time. It takes time, energy, and work. And people always think because what they do is they hear the stories of the 1% of the 1%, and they'll hear the story about that kid who does the toy reviews and he makes $20 million a year. Or they'll hear about the Jake Paul and Paul brothers that have made stupid videos and and they blew up overnight or whatever. And it's like, that's not the norm. That's 1% of the 1%. 99% of us need to do the work.
It's no different than winning a scratch-off lottery ticket.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I know.
And I always I used to run a juvenile detention center for a while. I was like an in-dorm assistant supervisor, and I used to tell the kids they all came from inner cities. I had kids from arsonists to murderers that were ages 14 to 21, and I would always have my groups and stuff, and I would say to them. And this is me, like, having groups with these kids as I'm going home at night and, being an addict. But I have it deep down in me to be a leader, but I just wasn't ready to take that step in life yet. But I held it together while I was, working the job and stuff like that. But at night when I got home, it was a different story. But,
right.
I always tell the kids, because the way I grew up, I started working when I was 13, and I always would say, guys, the only time you'll ever see success before work is in the dictionary.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right, 100%. Well, don't you love when you get like the 18, 19-year-old kids that go, I want to be a social media influencer, and it's like, you're 18. What do you know nothing. Like, 7 years ago you were 11. What do you know? You know nothing. Like, what are you who are you going to influence?
Especially these kids. I mean, like, the generational pool of right now, the kids that are 18, like, they're not coming from upbringing like we did. Like we had jobs when we were in high school.
Yeah.
We all worked
Yeah.
like whether it was like the local pizzeria or like, my dad's restaurant, or you had a paper route. Like everybody I know for the most part growing up in my age group and probably in your age group,
Yeah.
they all had jobs in high school.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. And even then, I wouldn't be able to. I mean, it's so funny. Like, you could throw catchphrases around and think that you're saying something, but you can't explain a situation until you've lived through it, and you can't explain it and have somebody else absorb it until you live through that situation. So, like for example, right? I had a scare over the holidays, New Year's Eve. I actually was rushed to the emergency room. It was a scare, and they thought I was having a stroke, but I wasn't, right? But they were checking me for a stroke because all the symptoms were, aligned with that. So they rushed me into the hospital, stuck me in a CAT scan. What's the other one? I forgot.
MRI.
MRI, took my blood, doctors all over me, and blah, 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 blah. And I said, Phil, because now I'm like getting nervous. I'm like, fill me in. What's going on here? So one of my doctors said, we're checking for a stroke. And so what I'm getting at is I'm married and my mom is 87. And the first two things that I thought of wasn't me. I wouldn't think of me. I thought of who's going to take care of my wife and who's taking care of my mother if I fucking get a stroke and I can't do anything with myself. If I die, if I can't go to work, if I'm paralyzed on one side. And that's all I was concerned about. And I would have never had that experience at 30 years old and healthy and fine, right? I would have been like, whatever. But I remember I grabbed the doctor's arm and I said, it was a female doctor, I was like, you have to help me. And it wasn't about me. That's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking of my wife and my mother. That's it. And, these kids that come up and they're like, oh, yeah, I want to be a social influencer. I'm like, what? You haven't been through life. Who are you gonna influence? You have no experience. Why don't you try going to school? Why don't you try going to college or going to a trade school and get yourself some life experience first, Anyway, I just thought that was a pretty good story.
Yeah, I mean, when I restarted my life, at like 33, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And, it took me 5 years to find myself to what I was going to do in life. And I totally, because of me finally giving in that enough was enough with the addiction,
right.
As they say, people, places, and things have to change. So I walked away from the whole restaurant business. My dad had the restaurant up until last year. And the last 4 years, I went from everything from, like I said, I worked in a juvenile detention center. I've dug ditches in a construction. I woke up in the morning and dug ditches. Went to school get my CDL at nighttime. Mm-hmm. I've swept floors in factories for minimum wage just to work multiple jobs in order to, afford some bills and keep busy.
Right.
And, I drove truck up and down the East Coast, sleeping in the back of trucks. I mean, I wouldn't appreciate life now where I work 5 days a week and I get to come home around dinner time and have time to do a podcast and go to the gym and have a good work-life balance. I wouldn't be appreciative if I didn't have to go through those struggles that I had to slowly build that core foundation to get back to where it is I wanted to be, and I wouldn't give up until I got what I wanted. And I feel as though like right now I'm exactly where I want to be. I mean, I'm not a millionaire. I'm not better than anybody. I'm appreciative of what I have.
Right. And you have to go through struggles in order to become a better man, especially for a man. I mean, I understand a woman too, but especially for a man. I mean, it's a little bit different because men and women are a little different, but a man has to go through struggles in order to gain character and experience and be able to pass it down, if you will. A privileged life, an entitled life, doesn't give you that. It doesn't. That's why you see people that are entitled and privileged and they don't appreciate anything. But it's if you ever watch Star Wars, right? If you ever watch the movie Star Wars, the first three, the original three, right? Luke Skywalker had to go through all those trials and tribulations before he got to becoming the Jedi Knight. And it took 3 movies and all this process. And I know it's a sci-fi film, but it's basically the journey of a man. He was a child, he was a kid when he first started, and he took on a teacher, and then he had to go through all these trials and tribulations before he actually became a Jedi. And it's just a story of man. Like, a man has to go through problems, whether it's an issue like yours or just everyday problems, or like myself about supporting a family and working and going through these things, and or it could be even worse. It could be like somebody like Larry, Larry Madz, who's made a complete and total turnaround from his life, and he's a much better person now because of the trials and tribulations he went through. And as a man, if you don't go through those things, that's why women like scars on guys, because you've been through some shit, it's no woman wants a guy that doesn't know much about life. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the best way, they say, like, the best way to grow is to start feeling uncomfortable, and I felt really uncomfortable with myself. I mean, like I said, when I restarted my life, I mean, I'm 33 years old. When I restarted my life, 32, 33, most of the people that I came up with, they're already 10 years into their career-ending opportunities outside of college.
Right.
So they have that life that, most people would want, with the white picket fence, the 2 brand new cars, the wife, the kids, going to Disney once a year. To see that, and I can't offer that to my kid because of my past screw-ups, that was tough, to stay sober, keep moving forward, and to keep having that drive and determination to be the best version of me I could. Mm-hmm. And it came through seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, manifesting, and, having those short-term, long-term goals. Like, I'm going to get here, then I want to get to here, then I want to get to here. But I can't skip step 1 to get to step 5.
Right.
I got to be patient. I have to eat it. I put myself in this situation, and I'm going to be the only one that can get myself out of this situation. Right. So the only way I'm going to do it is through hard work, dedication, and just keep showing up every day.
Mm-hmm. So, Stuch, what is the future of Scott Stuch and Sober Sitdown?
I mean, my thing is I want Sober Sitdown to be like a brand. Like you mentioned, like some of the big podcasters, like, Patrick Bet-David, Sammy the Bull, Joe Rogan. I mean, you just see their logos. It's like when you're driving past McDonald's. Yeah. You don't have to read the sign to know what it is. Right. I want people that sign behind me. I want people to see Sober Sitdown and already automatically know what it is. I'm not looking to do it as a full-time profession, but I would like it to turn into something that maybe possibly like, some motivational apparel, some stuff that I can do to start giving back to the community. Like, I want to start doing my mom battled mental health struggles before she passed away in 2011. She didn't die from mental health struggles, but it definitely contributed to it. Mm-hmm. She died of congestive heart failure at 48.
Oh, wow.
And because of her depression and stuff like that, she lived a very unhealthy lifestyle. Mm. So I want to do some, mental health awareness events locally, try and give back, with the community and stuff like that, and just do more stuff to make the Sober Sitdown brand more of something that people look forward to hearing. Right now, I'm on my 2nd episode. I just released last week. I'm doing all local stories. I had a ex-politician, lawyer. He was a local commissioner. He went away for 10 years for extortion and bribery charges that, honestly, they kind of threw the book at him. They gave him 11 years for, white-collar crime, and you got, like, pedophiles walking around the streets. It makes me sick, but what are you going to do? But I let him come on and tell his story. Now he's got a local radio show and TV show on Sundays locally, and he's cool with that. He lives a very humble, satisfied life now. Now that he, came out in his 60s, he can't practice being a lawyer no more. He can't do nothing other than, he does his TV show, and he has a good time doing it. And I brought him on and let him explain to people that just because life throws you a curveball, it doesn't mean that you have to strike out all the time.
Right, absolutely.
And then I had another guy just on, and this is a segment of the Sober Sitdown. It's called Sober Sitdown Hometown Edition, My Town, My Crew. the next guy I had on, which was last week, local friend of mine, Brian DiMattei. He's from the same hometown as me. He was into full-fledged addiction, drug use, and he actually got to the point where he was incarcerated for quite a little while. And he told his whole story and how MMA saved his life. He's been in MMA now, I believe, going on 3-4 years. He's an instructor now, and it totally was the void that was looking to fill his life to give him that positive change and something to look forward to.
Absolutely. Okay. Stuch, I really appreciate you coming on, man. And always much love, much respect. I know you're going to make it in the YouTube world and the podcasting world. That goes without saying, because you've already had great success and great drive and great guests. And great guests is key. People want to tune in when you got great guests, man. So, once again, much love, Scott. I truly appreciate it. And we will definitely be in touch, and we'll definitely do it again.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you having me. And for those of you that haven't checked me out yet, Sober Sitdown on YouTube, and please hit subscribe. That helps us out.
Absolutely. I'm going to make sure that link is in the description area, and I'm also going to tag you so that it is easy for people to go to, because I'm telling you, Sober Sitdown is a great YouTube channel. It's a must-see. All right, Scotty, I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Thanks, John.
You got it, dude.
God bless.